r/AskReddit by Redmond Dtes. Bilinguals of Reddit. What was the weirdest conversation that you overheard when the people didn't think you'd understand? This was about 3 years ago, and I was on a flight to Asheville. I speak Arabic. Man 1. Where is the woman with snacks? Man 2. She is in the back. What food do you want? I would like the crunchy cheese snack. What? Cheese is not crunchy. Cheese is soft and delicious, like your mother. Man 1 hits him playfully in the arm. I lost my shit laughing, and when they realized I could understand them they were amazed, and we had an enjoyable flight convo. I was sitting in the break room eating lunch, when out of the blue my table is commandeered by my Hispanic co-workers, gossiping about other co-workers to themselves in Spanish. After 15 minutes of awkwardly listening to them sling dirt, I get up to leave, and they ask, still in Spanish, how awkward would it be if the gringo could understand what we've been saying? I responded, also in Spanish, you don't know I speak Spanish? They were mortified, and one of them let out a really high-pitched cackle of a laugh. I felt more respect from all the Latinos at that job after word got out that I was a Hispano-hablant. I know sign language, and was watching a signed conversation between two women at a bar. One was hearing, the other was deaf. The overall gist was what the hearing woman likes in bed. She was telling her friend how she liked to be tied down, smacked around a bit. The only thing she didn't like was having her hair pulled, etc. Was 13 when my mom decided to confront my dad about cheating on her while in the same room as me, but didn't think I understood Russian enough to know what they were talking about. They kept it very calm for the most part, but what threw it all away was my mother calling his mistress a backstabbing cow who wouldn't know whose tit fed who. I was in Spain, on a roller coaster, and the kid behind me says to her mom in Icelandic, I'm going to throw up on the people in front of us, because I guess she was feeling queasy. However, when I turned around and told her to throw up on the people behind her, the mother started crying of laughter, and the girl just stared at me. I speak fluent Hungarian, and Hungarians have the bad habit of assuming no one abroad can understand them, because the language is so unusual. And 99% of the time it's true. Other times though, I've overheard stuff that was super private. Couples arguing in ways they never would if they knew others could hear. Emotional goodbyes, stuff like that. Probably the weirdest or funniest one though was the time my brother and I were sitting on a bench waiting for a tram when we were in our late teens, and a few guys our age nearby were doing the same. One of the guys said to the others, I like his shorts, and they proceeded to analyze my brother's fashion choice in front of us, while we tried to keep straight faces. Then the topic nonchalantly switched to girlfriends. So it appears that those guys weren't actually into my brother, just really liked his shorts. Edit, just adding a story I remembered from my mother. When she and my dad were newlyweds, they went to Austria for Christmas, and during the holiday they had dinner in a restaurant with a man whose only company was his dog. The man proceeded to feed his dog directly at the table, and my mom basically bitched in Hungarian the entire time about this. At the end of the meal, the guy came up to my parents and just said, Kelums Karaksonaya Nepakut Kivanok, and left. That means, I wish you a pleasant Christmas holiday, in a very formal way, for those who don't speak Hungarian. Dude had the entire dinner to think about the perfect way to school my mom, and he found it. Second edit, guys, pointing out Hungary and Austria share a border is kind of the point of my initial paragraph. Hungarians always assume no one can understand them abroad. Hungarian was much more rare there in 1981, when the story happened, but Hungarians will still do this in Austria today even though they shouldn't. In the line to go into Westminster Abbey in London a few years ago, my mother and I had real trouble holding in our laughter, as the girl behind us graphically described her last sexual encounter in loud Afrikaans. My father and I were on a train in the Netherlands sitting across from two girls, probably in their 20s. I was 10 and could speak Dutch fairly well, while my dad is from the Netherlands and is fluent. They had heard us speak in English to each other and just assumed we only spoke English. The entire train ride the two girls proceeded to talk about how stupid Americans were and how silly American English sounded compared to British English. The things they were saying were incredibly rude, but they assumed we couldn't understand a single word. As my father and I got up to leave, he looked at them and in perfect Dutch said, "Just so you know, you were sitting across from two Americans who understood every word you said." One of the girls immediately got embarrassed and the other just rolled her eyes at us. It was fun to get to reveal to them that their secret conversation about us wasn't as secret as they thought. In the pool yesterday I heard a woman say, "I hope this doesn't give our son diarrhea again." I swam away from them pretty fast. In the grocery store the other day. "Franklin, when are you going to get yourself a nice girlfriend?" "Nice girl here," gestures at me. "She's looking at you like she might be interested." "Tia, that girl is in high school." I burst out laughing and they both looked at me. "I'm pushing 40. Franklin, you made my day." Edit. Yes, in both cases, they were speaking Spanish. I'm not bilingual, but I'm from an area with a lot of Spanish speakers, and I did finish in the top 10 in my senior year's national Spanish exam. No, not recently, in 1995. A Vietnamese woman was talking to her daughter about how sad it was that my Viet dad is bald, and that he should do something about it. Her daughter warns her that he might understand, but the mother says he's Japanese, she's sure of it. A couple minutes later, my dad tells me to do some Vietnamese sign of respect to the lady. I was way too young to remember, but my dad says I executed it perfectly. On a bus into town in Dublin, Ireland. Two lads were speaking in Irish, and they thought no one could understand them. For the first, while they were talking about nothing really, schoolwork and what they are going to do at the weekend. After about 5 minutes of them just talking about random shit, a very heavily pregnant woman and her what I would say obese husband get on the bus. The two lads, thinking the couple didn't have any Irish, starting taking the piss out of them and saying the child was going to be extremely ugly and so on. Everyone on the bus who could speak Irish looked visibly uncomfortable, but the couple seemed to be unaware of the tormenting that was going on behind their back. Until the next bus stop. The husband turned around, calm as could be, and started to tear into these guys, verbally of course, in Irish, telling them that they're scumbags and should be ashamed of themselves. It was beautiful to see their eyes going from full of glee to terror in an instant. They were then kicked off the bus by the bus driver. It was amazing. Almost every time I go to a Mexican restaurant I can hear the staff having conversations that would prevent most customers from returning. I live in Iowa, so it is safe to assume that most of the people in a 50-mile radius of you don't speak Spanish. I can frequently overhear the wait staff or kitchen staff making remarks about people they are waiting on, rude customers, etc. And I frequently hear people talking about how messed up they are going to get that night or during the upcoming weekend. I'm Asian and speak about 8 languages. Sitting on a bus in Australia, listening to a couple of French girls talking about Asian men genitalia size and wondering how Asians become such large populations. I was about to say something polite in French when an older Aussie lady, about mid-30s in front, turned around and said in French, "Well, why don't you give Asian cock a try? There's a nice guy sitting behind you. I wouldn't mind him myself." I lost my shit laughing so hard right there, and when they realized I could understand French, I finally understood why female characters in old cartoons have red spots on their cheeks. Thank gosh. I've been wanting to vent about this. I started dating a Mexican guy and had told him I spoke little Spanish. After a lot of joking about how I don't really know Spanish, he started to say phrases I knew were intended to test my understanding. So I played dumb. Eventually he began to believe I understood little to nothing. One day we were laying in bed, him on top of me. While gazing into my eyes, he began, You have the most beautiful eyes. I smiled. He continued. And you're not that smart, kind of a low-class gangster. Not to mention crazy, and we won't be dating long. And it's so nice that you don't understand the things I'm saying. His seductive speech was littered with kisses and a few other insults that I only understood a few words of. And he said this with the sweetest grin. I just smiled sweetly and said in English, I do. You can go now. I'm still not sure if he knows how much I understood. It was enraging. Saw a deaf couple fighting in sign, and I saw her tell him that he's an asshole. He saw me looking and told me to F off. I signed to the chick, you're right, he is an asshole, and I walked off into the sunset. Not a weird conversation, just very rude. I used to work at a Portuguese bakery in a part of the city that has mostly Puerto Ricans. There's enough Portuguese Brazilians to keep the bakery going, but everyone outside of the bakery mostly spoke Spanish. I'm not sure why these two women thought I didn't know Spanish and ordered in English. I pour their coffee just fine and hand it to them in my usual professional manner. Then, as I'm ringing them up, one of them starts insulting the coffee in the most extreme manner ever, saying that whoever made it, that would be me, should go throw themselves in a fire and die, and that the coffee was so disgusting they'll just throw it out as soon as they leave. I straight up stare this woman in the eye and say in Spanish, here's your change, no need to wait either, there's a trash can right at the door. The look she gave me was nothing but of pure embarrassed anger. I'm Brazilian. I had bought jeans at a store and realized I bought the wrong size seconds later, so I just quickly go back in line and the lady says it's okay. But the woman behind us starts cursing me out, saying Americans are selfish and stuff like they think they can do whatever they want just because I'm not American, all in Portuguese which I'm fluent in. After I complete the transfer of funds, I turn around and tell her, that's funny, I think the same thing about Brazilians, in Portuguese, and she just quickly turns red and pushes her and her daughter out of the store quickly. I was once in a long escalator ride with some South Korean tourists in an international airport. I happen to understand Korean and listen to them marvel over the darkness of an African man's skin for a couple minutes. The old lady said she'd never seen skin so dark, she thought it was fake. The young woman next to her said she'd love to try and scrub it and see if any of the color comes off on her washcloth. They stood there and talked about it until the man turned around and asked if they'd like to touch his hand, in Korean. They freaked out. American Sign Language. Deaf people rarely assume others know sign. Two girls got pretty graphic about all the sex they were getting within their circle of friends. Some of the signs seem like they would be easy to understand as they are basically miming an action. Deaf culture is pretty cool for the most part with sexuality, homosexuality, etc., so no real cause for embarrassment. I speak 5 languages fluently, and I'm a white female. I play golf very competitively, and at tournaments it is primarily Asian dominant. So I'm normally 1/5 white people total. I come back from the round and I hear this woman screaming at her daughter in Chinese about how she let a white girl beat her, and how she was a disgrace to the family, yada yada yada. It was awful. So I turn around and say in Chinese, do you really not respect your daughter that much that you only love her if she wins? The girl gave me the most thankful expression. I can speak French. I was in a hostel in Germany. There were 4 French girls staying at the same room with me. When I was changing my shirt, one of the girls started to speak French, and she talked about how hot I am and how much she wants to suck my dong. About 10 minutes later, I asked the same girl to grab some beer. She said no thanks with a bitchy attitude. What the F, French girls? I was on a trip to Amsterdam with my family. We speak Spanish. While walking down a street with my dad, we passed another Spanish-speaking family, just as one said to another, "Isn't it great that here we can say anything to each other and no one will understand us?" To which my dad promptly interjected with a, yeah, you're right. I was in Yosemite and overheard a bit of a Chinese couple's conversation. They were talking about different regions of the United States, and the guy goes, "The North is great, no black people." The lady just nodded, like it was totally mundane common knowledge. This was years ago, and I might be paraphrasing a bit. Did you know she's dating a Jewish guy? Jewish? Don't they have, like, pencil dungs? Then one of them dropped something. My friend picks it up and says, "Here you go," in the language that they were speaking. They got super red and stopped talking after that. Two Swedish guys in a liquor store in Texas literally translated with their evaluation of the prices in Swedish krona. What does it one cost? 700. Devil. What the devil does it one cost? 600. Devilingly cheap. Is it best we buy some gin? Clearly. Such deviling large bottles. Does anything smaller exist? No, these here are the small list. Then we'll attempt it. I was on the bus headed home after a long day at uni last year, and there were two German girls sitting in front of me. They were having a conversation in German which they obviously thought no one would understand. Boy were they wrong. I went to Joseph's house last night. He's really hot. Yeah, he also has a huge dong. I've seen it. No. Yeah, I banged him last week. I went to get off the bus, but I couldn't resist turning to them and saying, "Ich spreche Deutsch." The look on their faces was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening. Tell your friends about me.